Cold cases, missing persons, unsolved crimes. This is a Monday Night Mystery with Mitch McCoy.
Mystery on this Monday. I am Mitch McCoy. Thanks for joining us on KARK.com and Fox16.com and across all of our digital platforms. Tonight we are talking about Linda Brewer. Where is she? The Mountain View native vanished several years ago, and there are a lot of circumstances surrounding this case that we are diving into tonight, and we want to begin with breaking news involving this case. Mountain View Police, for the very first time, saying that Linda's husband is a person of interest. But Linda's husband is also dead, and he died a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of twists and turns with this case. I want to welcome in our panel here tonight. We have Latricia Woodruff. She is a law enforcement and a communications expert. We have Tommy Hudson, a retired homicide detective, and we have Kelly Ward, a former Pulaski County prosecutor. All, thank you for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. Latricia, as always, we want to begin with you. Give us a rundown and a timeline on this case so we can start processing the turn of events.
It was back in 2016 in February. 43-year-old Linda Brewer was last seen. It was reported that she was last seen by her husband during that time. Well, it wasn't reported to police until April 14th. But the interesting thing about this is some family members say they heard from her as late as April 8th, when her husband said the last time he saw her was around February 28th, 2016. It's been 5 years, no answers. It's as if Linda Brewer just vanished into thin air. Obviously, she has a family who cares about her and wants to know what happened to her because she left with her keys. Well, actually, her keys were left behind. She left with no purse, no phone, and her car was still at home. And we all know that when people decide that they're going to leave on their own, that they probably take some of those things with them. So that this makes this case a little bit more interesting. And you mentioned that her husband is a person of interest, even though he passed away a few years after that. So very, very interesting case that we're going to dive into tonight, and hopefully we can drum up some more leads on this case so we can figure out exactly what happened to 43-year-old Linda Brewer.
Yeah, so many twists and turns with this case, and there's a lot to get here to tonight. But I want to go ahead and begin with retired homicide detective Tommy Hudson. Tommy, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Walk me through your take on the fact that the Mountain View Police Department tonight really recognizing for the first time that Linda's husband, who's dead, is a person of interest. What does that mean? Is that surprising to you?
Well, it's very telling that they're releasing that information. Obviously, at some point he's been on their radar, if not on their radar the entire time during the course of the missing person investigation on her. I mean, that's very telling. And, you know, I'm sure they're trying to find a little more information that they can to verify that was he involved in her disappearance or whatever bad has happened to this lady that's been gone for so long. You know, everything points to right now that she is probably deceased. And so that's very telling for me that they've released this to the media and they put that out there. So I find that very interesting.
Well, and there's just a lot surrounding the fact that they would release something like that. I mean, do you think that they're releasing it because he's dead now?
There is that possibility that's the reason why they're releasing that. He may have been on the radar the entire time. But, you know, common sense is going to tell you, you know, when a spouse comes up missing, any detective worth their salt is going to start looking at the other spouse as possibly being involved in what happened to them. And that detective's going to work their way back hopefully from that point, trying to figure out, is there a crime scene somewhere? Is there somewhere there was some kind of evidence to show that something bad happened to prove that? And, but in this case, you don't have any of that right now, but maybe putting that information out there might make people that might have some information in regards to her disappearance or possibly where she might be might come forward now knowing that he is deceased. So, I mean, that's a good strategy on their part in their investigation, and I think it's a good idea for them to release that information.
That's exactly the thought that I had.
For folks just joining us tonight, I want to welcome you, and we're talking about Linda Brewer. She was last seen in 2016, and Mountain View Police, for the first time tonight, confirming that Linda's husband, who's deceased, Gregory Charles Brewer, is a person of interest in this case. And for folks that are watching, you can join in on the conversation using the hashtag right there. You see Monday Night Mystery. I want to get to Latricia Woodruff, a law enforcement and a communications expert. Latricia, walk me through the dates again, because I'm somewhat confused. We're talking about the last time she was seen, then we're talking about her being reported missing, but then we're talking about maybe she was with a family member.
From what we can tell, the husband said that the last time that he saw his wife was around February 28th, and then she was reported missing on April 14th. However, from some reports that we found, a family member said that they last saw her and knew that she was alive and well and with another family member around April 8th. They said that she had gone to a video store with her 16-year-old daughter to drop off a video. Now, they spoke with the person inside of the video store, and they did confirm that the daughter came into the video store, but they did not actually see the mother, but assumed that she was out waiting for her daughter. And they said that was around April 8th, and then she was reported missing April 14th. But again, her husband said that the last time he saw her was around February 28th. So yeah, it's really confusing on the dates. We don't know if maybe that was just the last time he saw her and she left and was with other family members, or that he did something to her, because they're now saying that he is a person of interest in this. And I have to agree with Tommy. It's probably a strategy right now, because if they had evidence that points to him, but they could not just outright prove that he did it, now that he's passed away, perhaps some family members who didn't want to turn in their family member will come forward now and let us know and let police know what happened, so that we can possibly find, if she's dead, find her remains and find out where she is. So that could very well be the case in this right now.
Okay, Tommy, what do you make of these two different time frames? I mean, that has got to be a red alarm for detectives.
Yeah, it's very highly suspicious to me. I mean, alarms should be going off right and left for the investigators and the police involved in this, and I'm sure they were. I mean, the time period from the time that he says that he last saw her till it's actually reported, and I guess that'd be the question I have: who actually reported her missing? It's my understanding her mom or sister or something like that, some close family. He didn't report her missing. Am I right about that?
From Latricia, what do you have on the case details there?
From what I've been reading, he was not the one who reported her missing. It's other family members, maybe her mom or her sister, but it was another relative who reported her missing. And when they went to him, he said that he had not seen her since that date in February. So yeah, highly suspicious that this big gap in the time. And then he said he saw her at this time, and then she was supposedly seen a few days later, but then just reported missing even a few more days after the last time she was supposedly seen with another family member.
Yeah,
Well,
that's very, I mean, common sense is going to tell us that's very suspicious in itself. And, I'm sure the investigators that are working on the case have had that same thought, and they probably, kept him being on the radar, out of the media, just to keep their investigation going. But now, since this has happened now, maybe somebody that's a friend, not just a family member, a friend, whoever, somebody that's connected to him might have information about if he did do anything with her, what he would have done, or, you know, how he would have facilitated that. And hopefully those people would contact that police agency to say, hey, you know, people forget sometimes. They have information. They're like, well, this isn't important. If you have firsthand knowledge and you're connected to this person that's missing, and obviously something bad has happened, you need to pass that information on. The detectives aren't going to be looking for people to call that have an idea about what happened. They're going to know those people that had contact with this lady, that were involved in this lady's life, and then they want to work everything back from that information that comes in from those contacts and relatives.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for folks just joining us tonight, we're talking about Linda Brewer. She disappeared in 2016 from Mountain View, Arkansas, and she has not been seen or heard from since. There is a little bit of confusion regarding the timeline of her disappearance, which was likely a red flag for detectives. And we've since learned, confirming today with the Mountain View Police Department, that Linda's now deceased husband, Gregory Charles Brewer, is a person of interest in this homicide investigation. And they, in the course of their investigation, Kelly Ward, former Pulaski County prosecutor, authorities executed a search warrant at the couple's home. And the couple's home, Sarah Lane in Mountain View, Arkansas. Kind of walk us through that search warrant process and what you're finding out about what investigators found in the middle of that search warrant.
So the search warrant was executed with the hope of finding something, some sort of evidence that might give them a lead or some sort of insight into the case of Linda's disappearance. We don't know exactly what they found in relation to that. We know that it didn't lead them to any arrests, but what they did charge Mr. Brewer with at that time was possession of child pornography.
A major twist in this investigation, one might say.
Mm-hmm. That's true, Mitch. And so that he was charged with 2 counts of distributing or possessing child pornography after that search warrant. And then he also had 3 counts of terroristic threatening, felony terroristic threatening pending at that time. And that, from reviewing court documents, it looks like they have the violation date as being on April 4th of 2016, the terroristic threatening. And we know from news stories that was stemming from an incident with his brother's wife, where he had, it was alleged that he had threatened her and the brother, I believe, and maybe three different people. So a lot of stuff going on in this case, not just the disappearance, but then you have these other 2 court cases that are happening all around the same time, because April 4th, if you look at that timeline, you've got her being seen on the 8th. That was the last time, according to family members, that Linda Brewer was seen April 8th. This charge, the terroristic threatening, allegedly occurred on April 4th. And then you've got this other charge that came about after the execution of the search warrant. And all those charges, from reviewing court documents, it looks like all those charges have now been dismissed because he's deceased.
We're learning today, the Mountain View Police Department, that he died of a heart attack while in Texas. Let's throw out another plot twist. And this might help figure out that timeline, per se. Linda Brewer worked as a home health aide at the Stone County Health Department, and she did not pick up her last paycheck. And that might, Tommy, give us some direction on who's telling the truth regarding the last time they saw Linda Brewer.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch, this whole thing, the way it's played out on this timeline, it's enough that it shocks you. It's that far apart. And the investigators having to work. They're having to at the front end of this thing. They're having to go through what we're talking about right now. So they had to start back at the initial date and work their way back to the time that the husband last said he saw her. and try to verify or eliminate the information that's coming in from both him and other family members and friends. And so that creates a major investigation for them to keep up with all that information. But her not picking up her paycheck, her phone still being missing, all these other things that are left at the house, you're going to have to look at and say, somebody's done something to this lady. And, I feel sorry for the family members. I've seen some of your reporting on this. They think people don't care, but they should realize people do care out there. And it is a cold case, and I understand that, and I deal with cold cases, but they need to be aware that there's people out there that still care. And hopefully there's somebody out there right now that cares enough, that has a little bit of information, would pass that information on to the investigating officers.
I want to welcome folks in who are just joining us tonight, and I want to remind folks that you can use the hashtag Monday Night Mystery, and we will be able to use your question on air here during our show. And there's a question coming in right now from Christina. Christina, using that hashtag Monday Night Mystery, can her family confirm if they were separated to account for the gap in time? Or can they dispute that he had seen her after he is saying he did? Latricia, why don't you pick that up? What is your response to Christina's question? Obviously, the family can help here, but is law enforcement going to need somebody else to confirm that, like the store clerk who actually never saw her?
Mitch, I'm sure when the Mountain View Police Department started investigating this, that they went and talked to a lot of those people. Unfortunately, we don't have them here with us to be able to ask them some of those questions.
Can I jump in real quick? With that being said, we asked Mountain View Police multiple times to come on tonight to be a part of the conversation. They were unavailable. They said that they don't discuss active cases. Latricia, continue.
Understandable. And with them saying that he is a person of interest, they may not want to tip their hand, so to speak, at this point. However, they've been investigating this for 5 years now, and they announced that he is a person of interest. So going back to that timeline and him saying he saw her last on the 28th and other people saying they saw her this time, they are probably recognizing that this timeline is just not right and that he may not be telling the truth. There were some things that made them come to the conclusion that he is a person of interest. We're not privy to all of that information, so we can't plug in the holes right now. But there's someone out there who knows. Someone knows. There's someone who has some information about this that could help plug in some of the holes, add some more pieces to this puzzle of 43-year-old Linda Brewer going missing and no one seeming to know where she is. But again, her husband has been named a person of interest. He has since passed away. It's really a good time right now for folks to come forward. They should have come forward a long time ago if you had information. But right now, it's a good time for them to come forward. It's been 5 years. From the reporting that we've looked at, she has at least one child, a daughter, and a sister and a mom, and a lot of people who really care about her and want to know exactly what happened to her. And if someone did take her life, if her husband did take her life, then it could bring some manner of closure. Although this person is not here to be taken into court and found guilty on any charge that might come of this, knowing what happened to her could bring some measure of closure to them and even a little bit measure of justice, seeing that the police department kept at this, even though the main suspect is deceased, that they kept at this because it is important. I agree with Tommy. The family needs to know. People are still talking about this, and this is still very important.
Let's go down a couple different scenarios. Let's say Mountain View PD. Well, actually, I'll pose this question to Tommy. What will Mountain View PD have to do to prove or disprove that Linda Brewer's husband, who died of a heart attack a couple of years ago in Texas, is connected to Linda's disappearance. How will that work now that he's dead?
Well, we've had cases like that before here in Little Rock. What'll have to happen is either they have to get some kind of information where they can show where a crime scene was, or they can show where maybe remains have been disposed of. We also have to keep our minds open on this, or the investigators will at least, that, just because he's named as a person of interest doesn't mean he didn't have help. And so they're probably going to keep that close to the vest, which I understand that's what if that's what they're doing. And but they may be still working that avenue to see if somebody else was either complicit with whoever's involved in her disappearance and possible murder, or if they had assistance from somebody, because those people, if they're still alive, they stand the potential chance of being charged with murder if it comes down to it. But proving a murder without a body, it's a difficult thing to do, but it can be done, and it has been done in the past, at least not in Pulaski County. And so it's not impossible, it's difficult, but it can be done.
Well, let's go to Kelly Ward, former Pulaski County prosecutor. Kelly, what has to happen in the court of law for there to be some kind of prosecution if evidence is collected that points towards Gregory Charles Brewer?
So if the evidence pointed towards someone who was deceased, there would not be a case that was there would not be a charge against that person. And as we kind of talked about before with his other charges, they were dismissed because he was deceased. It's what the motion that the prosecutor makes is the case is abated by death, which is abated by the death of the party that's charged. So if the investigators determined this is a homicide, the suspect that we want to charge is deceased, they couldn't charge him in court. And I think what Tommy was kind of leading into is if there were any accomplices to that act, that they could bring charges against those people. But it would be difficult at this time because there's no one's discovered a body. We know that she's missing, but her remains, or there's been no evidence discovered that she is in fact deceased. So that would be the real problem, even if you had someone who's an accomplice charged with a homicide, is you have to prove that, that Ms. Brewer, or in any case, that person died as a result of a homicide because of the actions of another person. So without having a body to send to the crime lab, to have an autopsy performed on, to determine the cause of death, that's very, very, very difficult to prove that a homicide occurred.
I want to remind folks that you can engage, talk with Kelly, Tommy, Latricia, using the hashtag Monday Night Mystery right here on Facebook. And Cody is asking a question right now. Was the daughter ever interviewed, and if not, why? Tommy, I'll let you pick that up. We likely won't know that unless the daughter openly shares that.
Right. I would assume at some point that they have interviewed the daughter, or try to get some kind of a statement, to tell them what information they may have had. They're gonna have contact with anybody that's a friend or a relative. Anybody that was involved in her life at that time, they should be interviewing. And it sounds like that's what they've been doing. It's just, you get to a point where you do these interviews, and you may interview the same person 1, 2, 3, or even 4 or 5 times, just to clarify what that information you're getting, that you have to go follow up with another interview with somebody else and come back to that same person again. So I would suspect that they've interviewed the daughter.
And speaking of that, Tommy, it's likely that the police have a clear timeline on events. I mean, we're only going off of publicly available information.
That's correct. It's like we've discussed in some of these shows in the past. A detective investigating this case, I'm sure they're investigating it as a homicide until proven otherwise. That's the way we investigate cases. And, they're going to keep things back where only the investigator knows what happened. The person is deceased is obviously not going to be able to provide anything, and the killer or the person responsible for their disappearance is going to know. And so that's holdback. They keep that. They don't put that information out. Obviously, they've had some of it over a period of time because they've released this information to you today, but they're going to pick and choose what they release. I always tell people investigating a disappearance as a possible homicide or a homicide itself, it's not a two-way street. It's a one-way street. Law enforcement's going to take the information. They're going to determine what they're going to release, if they're going to release anything, and at what time they're going to do that. That will help them come to a conclusion to finality in the case itself.
Can I just play devil's advocate here, Tommy? And you
Sure.
know how much I respect you.
Sure.
It's been 5 years, right?
Yes.
I mean, why not release more information than what they have?
Well, there's like we discussed earlier, there's always the chance that somebody else may be involved in this. Somebody else may be complicit in her disappearance or possibly her murder if she was killed. So I understand why it's frustrating for the families and friends, but I understand why they're not releasing that information, because the detective himself is controlling that information and how that information is released, where it might help him develop more evidence or other witnesses that they can use. So it's controlled released, and it's the proper way to do that. In the social media age, we all want it. We want it now. We want it yesterday. You don't investigate a homicide or a missing person that way. That detective should control that evidence or that information they want released out to help get him to a finality here to figure out what happened to this young lady.
Latricia Woodruff, law enforcement communications expert. Do you agree with Tommy?
I agree with Tommy. You cannot show your hand in this and there could be other folks who are involved in whatever became of Miss Brewer. However,
I figured there was a but coming with that.
I believe letting especially family know that you are still on top of this and that we are working leads and putting out the bare minimum information of letting people know that this is still a priority and we are working this, and even sending out a little bit of information and asking the public for any information that they might have on there goes a very long way. And while we know that police officers have a job to do and they're focused on that, compassion toward family, letting them know that this is still important to us and that we are still working this, I believe goes a long way. Now, I believe that they feel that this is important to them and they are still working on it. But hearing that as a family member from the folks who are in charge of this investigation, I believe goes a long way, and will give them some hope that one day that we may figure out exactly what happened here. So there's a way to parse out some information that you can release to the public without hindering your investigation. So while I agree with Tommy on most of what he said, I do think that there is a way to give some information and a few updates without giving away your case.
And I'd like to also say, Mitch, I think it's very important that law enforcement stays in touch with the family and keeps the family updated. I tell you, one of the most important things for me, if I'm working a cold case or anything like that with a family member, is you don't let them lose hope, because if they feel like you've lost hope as an investigator, their hope is going to drop also. Yeah. And the biggest thing you can do for a family is be honest. Don't lead them astray or anything like that. And I don't think that's occurred here, but make sure we understand that. Yeah. But in any investigator that's investigating case, you should be honest with the family. Don't give them, false hopes, but, you should keep them updated and let them know where you're at on the case. And if you haven't had something new come in, this case is 5 years old now. If you haven't had something come in, it's not anything I would put on TV or anything like that, but I would let the family know. I don't have anything new that's come in yet, but you keep them updated periodically, because you don't want that family member, as an investigator, you're working for that family. and you're working for the person that's the victim, because that victim doesn't have a voice. So that responsibility lands on your shoulders now as an investigator to speak for that person that's missing or is the victim of a murder. So I agree with Latricia on that too, that you should always keep the family updated, but that doesn't mean you keep the media or social media. I kind of skew away from that sometimes, because sometimes that creates you more problems and it hinders the investigations.
Yeah, and I do think we're talking about two different roads.
Yes.
I mean, I think, you know, we're talking about, when we say public, we're talking about the public, but we're not necessarily putting the family in that same category.
Right.
And I know, Tommy, that's how you've done, you know, your cases. You know, you've always considered the family a different category than just the media or the public. So
it doesn't hurt to remind people from time to time that this is still a priority case out in the public arena. But yeah, I think Tommy and I are saying the same thing, but just in a different way.
I do want to give props for just a moment to Mountain View PD, and let me bring up their Facebook page. Latricia, I think you'd appreciate this.
Yes,
this is right here on the front page of the Mountain View Police Department Facebook page. If that doesn't give you some kind of and now it's, if that doesn't give you some kind of renewed hope, I don't know what would.
And that's exactly what I mean. You don't have to give away all of your investigative notes and tell them every lead you ran down and name names and people and places and all of that. You don't have to do that in the public arena, but letting people know that this is still on our radar, we're still working this, and it brings about more leads. People start talking about it. But what's most important is that this family knows that we are still concerned about this and we are still working to find out what happened to your loved one.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And as we wrap up, I want to just discuss some summer plans with our viewers. You know, of course, over the summer, everybody's lives get busy. And so we want to let folks know that we'll be here through the summer. Some of our shows will be reruns. We will be live throughout the summer for different cases that we want to get out and talk about. But, you know, we could kind of consider this our season 1 of Monday Night Mystery, and we'll be back later in the fall with a lot of more episodes. But we'll be live every once in a while. You know, if there's a case that comes up, we want to let people know about. If there's an urgent search happening, we'll be live. But I just want to take a moment. I know Sergeant Thomas Cole and Cara Boyd aren't here tonight, but I do want to thank each and every one of you for your time, your commitment, your passion to helping us on the show. I know that that there's a lot we can be doing on a Monday night, but I think that what we've been able to accomplish so far is case awareness, the road to justice, and education, explaining to folks how the criminal justice system works. It's not a Law and Order episode. It can't be solved in 42 minutes, but there's a long process. And you know, Kelly Ward has been able to give us all of that background, especially in the judicial system and in search warrants and that knowledge. And of course, Latricia and Tommy, with your guys' expertise in law enforcement. Tommy, your expertise in solving homicides and finding bodies when nobody else can, to Latricia and your communication background. Really do appreciate everything you guys have done for us throughout season 1. Truly appreciate it. I know people who watch us every Monday night appreciate it so much, and we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing here without you guys. So I just want to say thank you as we wrap up. You know, again, we'll be back throughout the summer, but for the most part, you know, we'll be back live every Monday later in the fall.
Thank you for having us, Mitch. It's important work, and I'm just glad that you all are doing this.
And I'll say too that we appreciate the opportunity, and we love nothing more to help people out and try to get a finality to what's going on, and so they can move on with their lives.
Absolutely. I think it's wonderful that, just being able to help out to maybe get some of these cases solved and get some closure and possibly justice for some of these families.
On a lighter note, I was able to meet Latricia and Tommy just working on various stories. I was able to meet Kelly Ward. Tommy, I don't think I told you the story. I was able to meet Kelly, ran into her at the Heights Kroger here in Little Rock. She was rolling up on a mini scooter.
A Vespa.
A Vespa. That sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
I like that. Somehow I knew Kelly was not on a mini scooter, a Vespa.
I've seen the Vespa. It was our secret, but it is what it is.
Well, I got a good kick out of when I heard about it, Kelly. But again, I thought Kelly was not on a mini scooter. There's got to be a proper name for what she was driving or riding on.
It's
you
definitely a two-seater.
You didn't see Tommy Hudson on a mini scooter.
It's definitely a two-seater, and she was rolling in there on a Saturday afternoon. So
okay, Kelly, I'm coming over and get that ride, girl.
Ride. Well, I'll go for a ride.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
All right, thanks. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us for another Monday Night Mystery. Again, we'll be back next Monday. It'll be some of our case highlights, the most important cases we've done on the show so far. And we'll be live every once in a while through the summer, bringing you the latest mysteries on a Monday night throughout Arkansas. For now, I'm Mitch McCoy. Have a good rest of your night.